Welcome to our channel. Today we have prepared for you an interview or, so to speak, a monologue by one of the owners of this wonderful automobile. You will definitely like it. And chance encounter when he was a teenager led Tommy Roberts to dreams of owning this 1970 Plymouth Superbird. 4 decades later, he finally got his wish. Perhaps it's an exaggeration to call that day on the cricket field life-changing, but the experience has certainly had a profound effect on the life of Tommy Roberts. "I'm 55 years old now," explains Tommy, and I was 14 back then. "I was playing cricket one Friday near Yateley in Surrey, and a yellow Plymouth Superbird drove past. I heard the V8 roar, saw that massive rear wing, and I was captivated. I didn't know what sort of car it was, but one of the kids there did. He explained it was a Superbird and it belonged to a local guy named Blondie. I always wanted a chance to see that car close up." David Blondie Melbourne was a celebrated stock car driver banger racer and was often also known as the Goovy since he headed a team of racers, a team which produced 2 world champions in the early 70s. Although Tommy never got the chance to meet Blondie or examine his Superbird, seeing it that day further encouraged his enthusiasm for American cars. "I always liked cars," continues Tommy, "and used to go the Blackbush Airfield drag strip with my dad, who had an old American pickup, so I always had an interest. But that Superbird had pretty much disappeared. I understand Blondie put it away in a shed and stored it for several decades, and the car hardly ever came out. It was put into an auction in 2019, and that's when a mate of mine saw it for sale and gave me a call. The Superbird had apparently been entered into the auction, then withdrawn, and it would be 2021 before Tommy got another chance. It came up for sale again, this time in an auction at Bicester Heritage, and I went along, saying to my son, whatever that car sells for, I'm going to have it. I was bidding against another guy, and after I finally won it, he came over for a chat. It turned out he'd planned to take the car back to America, where obviously it's worth far more than it is in the UK. I was really glad I'd managed to keep it in this country, particularly since the Superbird has been in England virtually all its life. I don't have any real history of the car," admits Tommy, "just what I've been told, but apparently it was imported by a Hells Angel in 1976 and Blondie bought it sometime in the 1980s. When I got the Plymouth, it was a non-runner, so I took it to a guy I know called Billy Rowe, who runs Namco, the North American Motor Company. It turned out Billy had worked on the car back in the day when Blondie owned it, and he knew it well, so Billy's filled me in on what little history I do know. I was also told by a guy at Santapod that the Plymouth once ran with the fender scoops and the nose cone painted matte black." Tommy has since found some period photos, one showing the Superbird with a black front end and another with the Roadrunner bird and Plymouth decals removed and wearing wide 5-spoke mag wheels on the rear. In one photo, it's even pictured with 3 other Superbirds, leading one to wonder just how many of these rare wing cars made it to the UK back then. Blondie re-registered from PPV405R to the appropriate number plate it still wears, since the car has the 440 CU in engine. After he got the Superbird in the 80s, it mostly stayed in his shed. Billy remembers repairing the gearbox and it taking Blondie 12 years to put it back in the car. 4 on the floor. Incidentally, that gearbox is a 4-speed manual with pistol grip atop a Hurst linkage. The lemon twist yellow Superbird has front disc brakes, the optional bench front seat, and the tick-tock-tacha clock in the middle of the rev counter, although the list of available options was always quite brief. Plymouth Superbird was born out of Chrysler Corporation's desire for stock car wins on the oval NASCAR tracks, wins achieved by experiments into aerodynamics. Their 1969 campaign had been fought by the Dodge Charger-based Daytona, but for 1970 Plymouth took tricks learned by Dodge and applied an aerodynamic front of its own design with pop-up headlights, a flush rear window, and a 24-inch rear stabilizer wing to its Roadrunner, and called it the Superbird. This speedway package added 19 inches to the length and some $1,264 to the cost of a Roadrunner, now making the purchase price $4,298. At least 1920 examples, several sources say 1935, were made enough to satisfy regulations about the Superbird being a genuine production model. The cars lured NASCAR king Richard Petty back from Ford to drive for Plymouth once again. However, the big birds were less enticing in the showrooms, where their outlandish appearance and high sticker price meant limited appeal to potential buyers. After these cartoonish vehicles sat unsold for sometimes well over a year, more than one was converted back to a regular roadrunner to facilitate a sale. Although Chrysler had plans to build a Superbird based on the 1971 Roadrunner and a prototype version exists, following NASCAR's effective ban on aero cars, those plans came to nothing. Tommy now had himself a rare Mopar since his bird is matching numbers and, so far as he can tell, largely original even down to much of the paint. The front end was repainted since, as I said, it was black at one point, but most of the rest of the car looks really original. Since it was in storage for so long and barely driven, it survived very well. Several people have said it looks like the original factory paint underneath since the car was never undersealed, while others have commented that the interior must have been reupholstered. But again, I believe that's just lasted well, because it was stored for so long. When I bought it, the passenger front wing had a dent, which I'm told happened when the car was in storage with one of the auction companies, which is perhaps even why it was withdrawn from the initial sale. A friend suggested a dent removal guy, and he tapped the dent out without even cracking the paint, which really impressed me. Otherwise, the car just needed a few little bits to get it running again, like a flush through for new fluids, some brake work, and a new fuel tank. Of course, I kept all the original parts we took off. What is the Plymouth Superbird like to drive? The first journey was to the Rally of the Giants at Blenheim Palace. I was a bit nervous getting used to the car, but it was faultless all the way up there. Then, once I arrived, it stalled and had a hard time restarting, laughs Tommy. I got it running again and parked on the show field where the car got loads of attention. Then, at the end of the day, surrounded by people, I was ready to leave and again, it wouldn't start. It turned out to be a simple electrical short that we fixed in less than 5 minutes. But it was a bit worrying until then, but that's just old cars. Now it starts on the button. I must say thank you to my good friend Nathan Thompson, who has also helped me work on the Superbird. Tommy has owned a few other American cars over the years, but naturally, the Superbird is by far his favorite. I used to visit the States and bring back cars, so I've had a few classic Mustangs, an International Harvester pickup I bought in Orlando, and a few Chevrolets, but I never expected to own a Superbird. I'm still getting used to driving it, really. Honestly, it's a dinosaur. But I love it. It holds the road really well, and I achieved a lifelong dream when I ran it up the drag strip at Santa Pod. I only took it up to 90 mph, but that was enough for me just to say I'd done it. It gets so much attention, people pull out their phones and video it on the motorway. But then others say it's the ugliest car they've ever seen. It's so original that I don't want to touch anything on it. I want to keep it unmolested. The Superbird lives in a heated garage. It gets babied and only gets used for car shows or drives on sunny days. It will stay in the family after I'm gone,